Colorado ban on manufacture sale of certain semi-automatic guns now on glide path to governor's desk. The biggest gun ban in history just passed the Colorado Senate. Okay, how could this happen? The left being unconstitutional fucktards. Day that ends with a Y. What I find interesting is the passing of this bill will give more rights to possessing and carrying a firearm to non-residents within the state of Colorado than the actual residents. Stone cold tarded move. This won't end well. How could this happen? Californians are honestly a fucking plague. You'd think after bitching about how bad their state is and then moving out, they would do everything to keep their new home from becoming like California. But no! They always vote for the same fucking things that turned California into its present shithole state. Just recently I read an article about 2 Californians that moved to Kansas, and in it was the following. California is expensive and unsafe. Can't have a family because shoebox apartments are $2,000 a month. Live with parents and save money. Go to Kansas. She's fucking amazed how safe, friendly, and clean everything is. But ma scary open carry. Ma no diversity. Wants to tell her friends and family to move. The most hilarious thing was everyone in the comments telling her if she voted Democrat they'd burn her house down. Lamau. Okay, we'll just reverse it along with all the other shitty laws. We have like 4 years. Damn, did they do anything about the rampant crackhead epidemic yet? They gave them jobs by electing them. 25% of Colorado reps aren't even elected. The rest are elected through mail-in voting, which illegals can also register to vote. Denver is the new glow HQ, so they have lots of druggies, illegals, and no guns to keep the population busy and unable to resist. How could this happen? This is the problem with these left-wing Cali faggots. California makes more than the rest of the country, so they just move in and buy out the locals that lived there their whole lives and change the local politics. Anecdotal, but I know plenty of trannies and leftists that migrated to Colorado over the last 5 to 10 years. Same with Seattle. I'm in Maryland and they're just about to jack up the gun excise tax to 23% like the Cali fags and pass another excise tax on soda that applies per ounce on every drink. Blue states are getting progressively worse and are hell-bent in spreading the plague. Actually, it was shelved for now. Prima facie unconstitutional. It just needs to hit the federal courts. They legalized weed. This always brings out the Californians. Denver passes ban on its own votes alone. Every other state is full. Gun laws will take ages to get to the courts if it gets there at all. It's all so tiresome. What is the best non-AR pattern rifle? CZ Bren 3. AK, duh. I don't even like AKs, but acknowledge they're the second best. Clearly the Daewoo K2. But of course, the SU-16, Memancer, SL8, Relancer, AUG. When I finally got the AUG, I was hugely impressed with it, especially with it being such an ancient design. Only other bullpup I've ever used was the Tavor, and I absolutely hated that thing. Trigger was god-awful. The AUG's actually isn't bad. It's heavy for sure, but it isn't creepy, crunchy, and stacky like the Tavor. It's pretty usable as a combat trigger, and I have no problem making accurate shots with it. The AUG is just so comfortable. With great ergos, ampi controls, barrel comes out, built-in grips, gas adjustment. My only complaint is that it's loud. You better double up on ear protection, and even then it rocks your world. I do have a suppressor for it in the gas adjustment block, but I haven't installed the muzzle brake yet to test it out. I got the RC2 Mini for it to keep it short. I don't think I'll be able to shoot it outdoors without protection like I can with the suppressed AR-15. I like the Set Me L. FAL. If it was shit, it wouldn't have been the right arm of the free world now, would it? Winchester Model 70. The Rifleman's Rifle. HK-53. I want a Brennan 7.62x39 pretty bad. Galil is a good-looking rifle. No, seriously, what the fuck was Hitler thinking? Have artillery capable of busting bunkers on the Maginot Line. Imagine this was a just-in-case solution if the Maginot Line became a bigger problem than it was. It was originally designed to punch holes in the Maginot Line, but we all know how that went. Later used in Sevastopol IIRC, questionably effective there, it would have been fine and a decent idea for city sieges if it was capable of firing more than a few hundred rounds without needing a factory refit for a new barrel. But this basically isn't possible. Rocket artillery / cruise missiles are the norm for long-range fire now for a reason. This is some cool fucking gun. They did break some sieges on the Eastern Front. Probably still a waste of resources, but they were a typically German over-engineered solution to a relevant problem. He was craving a big black cannon. Hitler, thinking, Annan. Long before this, the drugs had made a mess of his head. France builds massive wall over the course of 10 years to keep Nazis out. Nazis spend a fuck ton of money and manpower on a superweapon to breach the wall. It turns out you can literally just go around the wall. Superweapon never gets used. At the end of the day, the Maginot Line was actually a success, just not in the way anyone expected. It still forced Hitler to waste his money and time. They only managed to go around the wall through a not insignificant amount of luck, though. Is the Maginot Line the biggest red herring in human history? Spending half your defense budget in a stupid line turned to be useless because Germans attacked from Belgium. It was so under-equipped that German divisions' attacks easily penetrated. Rebuilt to defend Germany 3 years later. Scheißegal. I like this big gun. He was thinking about the scale model kits. He was thinking about cool enemies for gamers to have. He was thinking about how we will make something that will make realism autists seethe. The 3 most noble pursuits in life. I always build it in Hearts of Iron 2 to break through Gibraltar. Otherwise, it's pretty useless. Best to dump that research on nukes and turbojet aircraft. Each of the 3 turrets on Iowa weighs more than the Schwerwer Gustav. It had some uses and did what it was designed to do well, which was lob big bombs at unheard of distances. Also, 503 is mostly correct that by the war years, Hitler had noticeably started losing touch with reality. He was not a military man, he was a failed artist and politician who served when he had to and got mind broken by the German defeat. He actually spent most of the war arguing with his generals as he was notoriously a shit strategist. People would show him new weapons to clear, but because he LARPed as a military genius, he didn't know what was effective or not. Me big leader, make big gun, enemy big scared. What's the rarest gun you've ever shot or owned? Pick related, Kalashnikov SR-1, civilian version of the AK-107. Same recoil dampening counterweight system as the AK-107. 0 muzzle rise when shooting. Compatible with AR mags and M-LOK accessories. Sadly, doesn't come with iron sights. Had to buy pick related red dot. Pretty reliable so far, no failures whatsoever after a few hundred rounds. Heavy as fuck, 4 kilograms or 8 pounds empty. Much better ergonomics than the traditional AK platform. Mag release and bolt release are both right next to the trigger guard. Safety is just above. Ambidextrous bolt handle. Only downside is its moving handle, which can be a problem if you are not gripping it properly or want to use the sling. Accuracy is good for an assault rifle. Consistent 1 MOA groups at 100 meters. Only a few were exported out of Russia between 2019, year it came out, and the sanctions due to the war in 2022. Enfield L42A1 with original crate, one of 1,080 made. Not exactly a unicorn, but rare, 1918 Luger. Not rare, but my SAR-1 is covered in trench art. The sling has Rambo carved into it, and the stock has kill marks along with a bunch of different names and a cross etched into the dong. Rarest I've shot? It's a toss-up between my buddy's Frommer Stop or a real SGG-44 at a range. Rarest I own? Probably my M1D Garand. I don't think my Springfield trapdoor is exceptionally rare, and I also have a Marlin Model 39D I've been told is rare. Probably the Berger Slurger Fletchstep. Beretta AR-70/90. About 900 parts kits were imported in 2020, of which only 300 have been assembled by known builders who do it. So probably less than 400 in the country. Not super duper rare, but definitely rare. Got a few here. Pre-ban Arsenal SA RPK-5 with blonde wood and poly furniture. 5.56 RPKs are almost non-existent in the US. Colt LE6940P Piston AR. Heard these were made for dough and only 1,000 to 2,000 were made. Hard to find replacement parts though. Kusa KP9. Not really much to see here, but discontinued due to, bankruptcy. Even if their website is still alive for some dumb reason. Shot a CZ Parrot today. It's hilarious to play with race guns. 9-day difference from shooting a carry pistol. Also shot a Luger, which was a lifetime dream of mine. Very fun to shoot, but man, that rear sight may as well not even be there. Rarest is probably the Felt TF919. I don't know exact numbers, but it's very small. Double digits in the US at almost third bay ounce. Certainly less than 100 since it's technically not been released. I would guess it's closer to 20 in the wild. Armatix IP1, never commercially sold in the US, supposedly only 20 imported for press demonstration out of perhaps 300 produced. M18 recoilless rifle, less than 1,000 made. Also have a Rem Lee 1899 and 303 Brit. No clue how many were chambered in this, but less than 12 are currently known. Own? Probably Paratrooper Arasaka. Not particularly impressive, but I'm very proud of these two. Real deal 1-7 twist barrel West German HK93 and current production 550. As for that I've shot, probably a prototype/test round Serg upper that went to SOCOM for an XM17 marked P320. Same one that showed up in the SIG Vickers guide. My rarest gun are the Telco XM10, Portuguese contract AR-10 built on a US receiver, and Wolf Ultramatic. I have 3.5 of the stupid things and 38 Super 9x21 in 9mm. Sadly, the XM10 has cancer, where the two halves of the stock start to split apart, so I don't take it out often. Rarest gun you've ever shot? An STG-44. Rarest gun you ever owned? Probably not that rare in burger stand, but I have a 1944 Garand converted post-war to 7.62 Hato by Breda. My Uzi by FN Herstal, owned legally in France, one of the most absolute piece of shit when it comes to aiming. After 2023, they asked me to sell it to the police because the surplus block and barrel were considered reversible in full auto, which was true in fact. I seized the opportunity of getting rid of it. What's the rarest gun you've ever owned? My unaltered 1893 Ottoman Mauser in 7.65 with the magazine cut off. My Spaz 12, mine is different because I'm pretty sure it was a caught-in customs gun. It has a fixed stock with a full-length magazine tube. From my understanding, it originally had a folding stock, but when the 89 ban happened, they had to swap the stock out. But it was still a full year before magazine capacity was restricted on imports, so it still has an 8-shot tube. I don't have anything super rare, but I have a few uncommon guns. My Nagoya Type 99 Long is one of 8,000 made by them before they switched to the short rifle. I also have a Weimar-era Simpson Luger, which they only made 12,000 of. I mostly collect iconic 20th century shit, so as a consequence I don't really have anything excessively rare. Pick related is probably the closest. These are rare as fuck. Too bad feeding it kills my wallet. Probably the Moroku Liberty Chief. It's a revolver made in Japan that fires 38 special instead of 9mm Jap unobtainium. It's not rare by any means. They brought a few thousand into the US when Moroku didn't win the Japanese police revolver contract. It looks good, but is definitely a bit rough around the edges. Overall, I like it, even though mine is a little clapped out. My FN-15 patrol rifle I bought at the PX at JBLM. This was before anyone sold military clones and I wanted a legit M4. I replaced the barrel from the 16-inch cold hammer forged to a 14.7-inch FN barrel with the A2 birdcage pinned and welded. It has a Knight's rail direct buy from CAC, Matek rear iron, Trigiconti A31F red chevron, and a full ANPA and Pack 4C laser. Rarest? My Uzi pistol. The most unique is my Nagant revolver. Rarest gun you own? My Soviet Dragunov. Rarest gun I shot? An STG-44 and a PSG-1 all in the same day. I've got my M1C that is probably my rarest or my HK Super 90 M1. Model 53. Not extremely rare, but definitely uncommon. HK SL7. What's uncommon are the 20-round magazines. Found 2 of these in a gun shop in Austria. Apparently HK made 20-round Forester or Woodsman mags and only sold them in Germany, Poland, Austria, Switzerland, and Czech Republic, and even then only briefly. Recently I posted my 83 Spaz in another thread, so I'll post what's probably the second rarest thing I own apart from a near mint commercial Luger, hoping that stuff for the K1 starts coming along if the K2 stuff goes well. Shot a full auto Uzi with the wood stock before, but the particular example kinda sucked ass. I didn't get to shoot it, but I did get to see a Mount Pac-2 handgun when I visited the DPRK that dear leader Kim Jong-il used to shoot a perfect 600 25-meter score. I fared much worse because I am a shit shot even with the provided Margolin. Win Torres, in the process of making it into a Val just to piss people off. Rarest I've shot, original 1803 Harper's Ferry rifle. I thought it was just a repro with really well done faux patina until the guy told me. Apparently he doesn't let anyone else handle it, but I spurged out so hard about it and the Lewis and Clark rifles that he knew I was a true student of history. Rarest I've owned? Probably my FNC. It's nice. It's an early import, so it has a 1.7 military barrel instead of the 1.12 sporter barrels they brought in later. Pretty cool, but 90% of the people who come to me at the range reference that anime. Not as much recently, but when I first got it, it happened all the time. Rarest I've shot was my dad's Wild E45 Win Mag. That or a completely handmade hardware store special shotgun. Technically, that particular gun is a one of one. Rarest I own is a Giselle of indeterminate origin. As far as I can tell, it's not a genuine period gun, but was made relatively recently. Beyond that though, I don't know where it came from or how it got here. I haven't shot it yet, but the rarest gun I own is my all-matching Gewehr 44 that already has a shooter's kit with it installed. Cheap, reliable, showers invaders with lead. When did the shotgun go from quintessential home defense gun to the worst possible choice for home defense? Faggots online really and unironically defend that anything but an AR-15 will get you killed, raped, and burned by a platoon of Al-Qaeda terrorists. Is it the lead making mall ninjas retarded? For fuck's sake. Ignore consumerist. Shotgun is fine. Even break action. Load up with Foster Slug and call it a day. Especially break action. For those faggots that still didn't have guns, just go to Walmart and buy the single shot break action shotgun and a pack of buckshot. It'll cost you like $120 plus tax. Showers invaders with lead. No, it doesn't, no guns. It makes a single big hole. They're fine, but only with number 4 and number 1 buck max. Double-aught buck, which Fuds love to suggest, is a retarded choice and will over-penetrate. Exit holds mean they bleed out faster, so triple-aught it is. Precision and reach is more important, at least for me. A shotgun is still far better than a melee weapon, though. Anything but an AR will get you killed. Shotgun go boom. When did the shotgun go from the quintessential home defense gun to the worst possible choice for home defense? It was never either. This is the telephone game at work. The shotgun used to be recommended as a home defense weapon because they were common as hell. Tons of boomers had them for hunting or clays already. And if you needed to buy one, they were very cheap compared to the alternative. 20 years ago, an AR cost many times what the basic shotty cost. Nowadays, nobody says they're the worst choice for home defense. Rather, people say that other options are superior. And while that might be technically true, it's not the same thing as saying a shotty sucks for home defense. It just works. Yet a simple semi-auto 9mm handgun remains perfect for home defense. Shotguns are great for property defense, not necessarily a home invasion. I still contend that a high-capacity handgun with a flashlight and/or laser is still the best choice. Unparalleled mobility and leaves your other hand free, can get heavy grain hollow points to minimize overpin, and by far the cheapest to train with, which is the most important factor. I had a shotgun for it until I got a 300 Blackout AR for fun suppressed shooting. I don't want to completely rape my eardrums if I have to respond quickly. If I need to, I'm probably grabbing my shotgun still. When did the shotguns go from quintessential home defense gun to worst possible choice for home defense? When AR-15s became cheaper than pump shotguns, the only argument you really had over an AR was, well, this pump shotgun cost $300 to $400, and this AR is $700 to $1,000. I can use the hundreds I saved and practice that way. I'll be better off than the moron who spent all his money on just buying the gun and couldn't afford ammo. Make the AR as cheap as a pump, well now that one valid reason is gone. When it comes down to it, home defense shotgun ammo costs more than 223.556. You can't even argue, well, I practice more than the AR guy. Birdshot's cheaper, but you don't train with that if you intend on using buck. Shotgun loses in capacity, ease of use, forgiveness, max effective range. Only needing one hand, ease of reloading. The only real pro is if you pick a good load, whatever you hit will die, versus will probably die. Extremely loud, very costly rounds will fuck up anything in its radius, causing home repair bills, long and unwieldy and potentially cramped hallway engagements. Why would I? Extremely loud. Can't imagine it's any worse than 223-556. Very costly rounds. Requires shooting far fewer. You're not gonna shoot 200 rounds of buckshot in trash like you would an AR. Will fuck up anything in its radius, causing home repair bills. Total meme. C-170. Long and unwieldy and potentially cramped hallway engagements. Again, hardly any worse than a 16-inch AR, and you can't SBS it if you want. The P320 cannot, under any circumstances, discharge without a trigger pull. That is a fact. The allegations against the P320 are nothing more than individuals seeking to profit or avoid personal responsibility. Recently, anti-gun groups, members of the mainstream media, trial attorneys, and other uninformed and agenda-driven parties have launched attacks on one of Sig Sauer's most trusted, most tested, and most popular products. The P320 pistol. In all cases, these individuals have an ulterior motive behind their baseless allegations that the P320 can fire without a trigger pull. They have no evidence, no data, and no empirical testing to support any of their claims. They instead choose to misrepresent clear, negligent discharges as a design problem. In the decades since its introduction, the P320 has undergone the most rigorous testing and evaluation of any firearm by military and law enforcement agencies around the world. It consistently delivers a proven record of performance and reliability through state-of-the-art engineering and documented quality control at every stage of its production. Claims that unintended discharges are anything more than negligent handling and or manufactured lies to support an anti-gun, anti-SIG agenda are false. Furthermore, lawsuits claiming that the P320 is capable of firing without the trigger being pulled have been dismissed in courtrooms around the country. In addition, multiple plaintiffs, so-called experts, have conceded it is not possible for the P320 to discharge unless the trigger is fully actuated. The rhetoric is high, and we can no longer stay silent while lawsuits run their course and clickbait farming, engagement hacking grifters continue their campaign to hijack the truth for profit. Enough is enough. From the courts of law to the court of public opinion, we will combat the lies and misinformation with the truth. Sig Sauer stands behind the quality, safety, and design of all products, especially the P320. Industry, take notice. What's happening today to Sig Sauer with the anti-gun mob and their lawfare tactics will happen tomorrow at another firearms manufacturer, and then another. Today, for Sig Sauer, it ends. Have you ever seen a firearm corporation spurg out this bad? Ring! It doesn't go off by itself. Ring! You wouldn't let a Democrat tell you our pistol will shoot you in the cock, would you, fellow patriot? Still don't believe there's an issue until someone can demonstrate it in a controlled environment. Everything up until that point is hearsay. I remember people like you with the Glock WML issue, the Glock chamber support issue, and the limp wrist issue. If there wasn't a design or QC problem, then they wouldn't keep going off in situations where other similar firearms are not. I've never so much as heard a single stock Glock going off inside a holster without a clearly identifiable reason, which is always that something pressured/pulled the trigger. Same goes for practically every other popular striker-fired handgun on the market. There isn't some giant conspiracy against the P320. It just won't stop having problems. And the last thing the party said was, don't believe your eyes, yada yada yada, don't care. Stickers got what they deserve. The 1911 stays undefeated. T, 26 years old. Anti-SIG agenda. Is that what they're calling it now? SIG sells inferior product. It's the fucking anti-gunners running this campaign. Lol, I don't think the anti-gun lobby has the sway it used to. In fact, I don't think they have much of anything at all. Glock leg is a thing because people learned the hard way you can't use floppy soft holsters with trigger safety guns without being autistic about your holstering. World moves on to Kydex and people use stiffened in metal reinforced leather, and Glock leg stops being a thing except for totally oblivious people. In a world where Kydex and hard plastic holsters make up the majority of holsters used nowadays, the 320 specifically still gives SIG cock. Not the Glock 45, M&P 2.0, PDP, P10C, XDM, Canic whatever, VP9, nor the SIG P365. We will combat these lies in the court of law. Settles out of court. What did Sig Sauer mean by this? The P320. It ends you today. So Sig of it. We support you, Sig. We know your gear is the top of its tier. The lies of the left are slowly dying. Let them all falter at the bastion that is truth. Thank you for what you do. The Cope replies on this are scrumptious. It's the damn lefties that are trying to say the SIG will shoot your cock off. The mainstream media! Fucking keck. Not reading all of that. Congrats or sorry that happened to you. I've never gotten the it's cops who are having these issues, so it doesn't matter arguments. I can understand thinking Officer Bumfuck is a retard who can fuck up easily, but we don't have the same reports and videos of these happening with Glocks and Smith & Wessons. So Glock 17s and MMPs are more idiot-proof and thus safer. It also makes sense that people who carry a firearm every single day would be the ones who quickly discover the issues with any firearm they're given. Spears pointing this out doesn't help the company either. If I was on a police department and looking to get new service pistols, and the fans of the company are actively saying cops are too dumb to carry these guns, then I wouldn't get them, and would look at the alternatives that my officers won't be too stupid to not shoot themselves with. It also ignores the countless competition shooters who have also had terrible issues with the P320. But I don't expect SIGers to be honest with their cope, so they'll obviously ignore those. Cool story, Sig. Gonna keep using my dad's Old West German P226 that I inherited from him. Older than me and has yet to blow my cock off. Which wouldn't be too hard, as it's a pretty big target, if you know what I'm saying. Sig, what the fuck are you doing, Lamau? Public trust is at its lowest with you, between the P320 toxic work environment or your questionable military contract procurement. You can at least admit there's an issue with your gun and eat the cost of a recall after you find a fix. There is no fix, there's only replacing it with a different design. Replacement is at least theoretically possible, given the semi-permanent nature of the sear housing thingy. Unfortunately, SIG is shit. The entire P320 ecosystem disappoints me, because of SIG's unwillingness to go all in on modularity. A double-action, single-action P320 with the USP's fire controls would make me nut. How do you counter this? More armor than an IFV, can lose a limb, 2 lungs, and a heart and keep on fighting. Main weapon is a supersonic grenade launcher that eats an IFV. Has the reflexes to shoot a bomb dropped from a plane out of the sky. Faster than some trucks. Built-in nods and binoculars. Can rip open a tank's hatch. By waking up from my dream. Wooden stairs. 6-foot-tall doorways. A horde of screaming green retards that were literally born yesterday. They can be countered by flimsy normal people stairs. If they don't wear a helmet, their plot armor goes down massively. A Terminator loses a fight to a wooden staircase in one of the Dark Angel novels. He gets told that they'll send out some serfs with a crane to fish him out of that basement, but in the meantime, sorry, you're just going to have to lie there until the battle's over. Maybe don't be such a dumbass next time. They're canonically countered by bayonet charges, and your power creep is absurd. Their armor is more like an M113 or BMP, and their bolter is a shotgun slug-sized round with a gyro jet attached. Direct hit from a modern tank round will still kill them. Same with sustained fire from 25mm plus or a hit from ATGM. If in open, send tanks and IFV, our current optics are enough to keep guns aimed. If in city, keep track of them and cover entire grid with artillery. They are shock troops. They will die to standard weapons. They are shock troops. They will die to standard weapons if you throw enough shit at them. In lore, multiple shots from basic bitch overloaded lasgun are enough to pierce the armor. Won't help you 1v1, but in situations like 1 Marine versus 20 Kriegsmen firing disciplined volleys at him, Space Marine is in trouble. This is mostly wrong and retarded. Can rip open tank's hatch? No, they can't. They have crack and melt the bombs for a reason. Marine fan wank is fucking gay. Laser guided bombs from really high. You suggest chaos. Space Marines can still die to a direct AT hit. Hell, I'd even bet most AT rifles we have now can pin their thinner plates. Anything with power similar or greater than 20mm has a good chance of blowing through their armor and killing them. Lasguns are about equivalent to 50 BMG, and we see those killing them if they get lucky as well. And overcharged las packs burning through their armor as well. So it stands to reason that 40mm HEDP grenades, autocannon fire, etc. will wipe them well enough. Tempt them into making packs with space demons. IFVs, RPGs, artillery, you don't need a positive KD, you just need to kill them, and we have enough of those tools right now. One rusty knife with wire wrapped around the handle and some glyphs enchanting several thousand years old. If these guys are so smart and so fast and so tough, why do 90% of the depictions of them with the GW stamp of approval show them as normal speed retards who walk right into machine gun fire and die when they take one round through the stomach? Surely my normal grunts have some kind of AT solution. A RPG will do this faggot in, and he's outnumbered 100 to 1. Accuse them of heresy and send in the even more armored, stronger Psyker Grey Knights. Sure, Ultramarines are powerful Mary Sues, but their Mary Sue-ness is nothing compared to the Grey Knights. Thoughts about tossing frag grenades and full autoing around corners for CQB instead of pie slicing? My thoughts are, that's how literally everyone that's not trying to rescue hostages does it. If you don't have hostages to be concerned of fragging, your way is better. If the objective is to kill everyone, I do nothing but throw grenades. Don't give me a gun, just give me a pillowcase full of M67s and I'll tie it to my belt. Dudes always have their arms plus guns in the window/around corners when the frag goes off. Doesn't look very smart. We slice pie when we worry about civilian casualties or friendly fire. Stop being retards and acting like a meme from 2021 is the word of God. Why does everyone act like you can't do both? You will have to turn the corner eventually. Nade and blind fire pie after to make sure it's safe. Everyone wants to look smart by saying CQB is dumb. Insecurity complexes from old millennials who avoid the GWAT. Full autoing around corners for CQB instead of pie slicing. Anon, full autoing around corners helps your teammate behind you safely slice the pie. Desert Storm and prior, it was the SOP to toss a nade and spray the room. You're going to run out of grenades and ammo fairly quickly considering the number of corners if you are doing that in the trenches. Turns out COD 4 had it right all along. Triple frag, sonic boom, and martyrdom is the way to go. Smart, police-style CQB tactics stop working if you lose the element of surprise. Pretty much this. GWAT era infantry CQB is SWAT shit, not close assault. That's just the rules you play by when you're working in that environment. Outside of it, things get a lot less restrictive. It's the Ides of March. In what we now know as 44 BC, you are Julius Caesar and have just walked into a meeting of the Roman Senate, the Curia Pompeian. You received a premonition. All of the senators are armed with concealed daggers, and in exactly 60 seconds they will attack you. What do you do to survive? Imagine modern senators doing anything personally these days. Wasn't a senator, but Hendrik Verwoerd, 6th Prime Minister of South Africa and widely considered the architect of apartheid, was stabbed to death by an aide, a commie go figure, during a parliamentary meeting in 1966. Brutus is as a brother to me. He would never perpetrate such a vile crime. Is a brother to me. Forgetting Romulus killed Remus shortly after our Rome's founding. Not gonna make it. I have my trusty new loyal friend and newly appointed senator and former first spear centurion of the 13th Legion protect me. Nothing can get past good old Lucius. Pick related. Wearing a toga everywhere so you don't fat roll. Perhaps I was too harsh on his loadout. Pull out my trusty Glock and start blasting, but it gets jammed and I die. Inform them that I have just received a premonition from the gods of their betrayal, and that they should go through with it. Rome itself would be punished with thousands of years of humiliation, becoming little more than a source of spaghetti-themed jokes and silly accents. Invite them in to discuss what their grievances are and work to resolve them, stating that the gods have forbidden him for seeking revenge for an assassination that was prevented. Spoilers, they didn't. Start planning my own assassination, ideally doing it myself, since now I don't know who can be trusted. As a divine avatar, I've actually been possessed with a total premonition of the future. I have always known that I would be killed on this day, and that my death would be the only way to ensure the ascension of my nephew Augustus to absolute power, the creation of a Roman principate, and the preservation of Roman civilization for millennia to come as a consequence. I knew I came here to die, and have known since the day I was born. I used the last 60 seconds to come up with a dope death line so that the future dudes can write me into a play and also a bunch of movies and books. You take puncture after puncture until your vision becomes hazy, and in your last hurrah on this goddamn planet, you cry, "Smell my onions." It's AD 2016. A 14-year-old on his high school theater is playing as you. As he's finished off with dinky push-in blades, he cries, "Did we even have onions back then? Your legacy is Onion Man now." I think I'll probably have a seizure and shit myself just like Julius Caesar did in real life. I pull out my lightsaber and say, "So it's treason then." He was only jumped by 3 senators despite 40 plus being involved in the plot out of a total of 400 to 500 senators. The actual attack was entirely botched. If they didn't have the element of surprise, like in this scenario, Caesar wouldn't have died. The vast majority of people in the room just froze and watched 2 people fight with him. Then the third guy slipped a dagger in his ribs. The remaining stab wounds from the other senators were all after he died. The actual attack was entirely botched? I mean, he died. Who should have won the XM17 trials? And with Sig going full retard, who should get a second chance? Couple more Private Ramirez's losing their privates, and an official investigation due to mounting public pressure could give someone else a chance. So who do you want to see win it? Either from the previous entries or not. Beretta APX or FN509, assuming not squishy. And before someone replies with that one vid of the rail falling off on the 510, FN playing the "not this shit again" reverse Uno card. They actually adopt something. Fuck. Handguns don't really matter unless you're high-speed, low-drag, and since all these would perform about the same in the hands of the average dude getting one, the updated M9. Glock, but they should have been forced to add a manual safety. But that's not necessary. Shut up, nigger. But it's not modular. Stupid and unnecessary requirement. Shut up, nigger. Also, the funny bullpup should have won the rifle competition, if only to make all the boomers seethe. Glock, Beretta, APX, or M9A4, or MMP, Sig was slightly worse than all of these, and the others are non-factors. The 1911 should have won purely for memes, in 10mm. Unironically, Smith & Wesson. Garland Bull proved it. I like how nobody is replying to the obvious cyber trolls. MMP 2.0 and AR-15 are reliable, though ever be it. They should have just ordered replacement parts for the M9s. There was zero need to adopt a new pistol. APX if they wanted a gun that met all the requirements. If they just ignored the retarded modularity requirement, then every single one of the contenders but the P320 would have been good. Probably MMP 2.0 because it's a low-cost gun from an American company with sufficient production capacity already extant. That and the thumb safety is desirable for a military handgun. Glock, but they should have been forced to add a manual safety. Not to mention that a Glock 17 or 19 model with a safety would have been a massive success on the commercial market. If I didn't know that Glock was allergic to doing anything other than making the same exact gun since the 80s, I would be surprised. These. Literally anything but SIG. Glock or M&P would be the best choices, IMO. Glock really needs to make a handgun with a manual safety. I just like safeties. I don't believe a new pistol was worth investing in to begin with. The only people who actually use their pistols are SOF, who already used Glocks, so it doesn't even matter. I understand they had to spend the budget on something, but even within the small arms bracket, there are more worthwhile things to waste excess cash on, like a standardized free-float handguard for M4s, or dimpled barrels for M240s, or aluminum M2 receivers. Just mundane programs that would improve the lives of more than a handful of MPs and commissioned faggots. CZ, because I'm a CZ shill and I like CZ. Little known fact, the P in P320 stands for penectomy. What's Glock's major malfunction anyway? Designed and manufactured tiny bespoke badges for various governments, every Glock collector now wants one too. Nah, you can't have it. We hate money. They should just choose a 2011 made in America and get a company that can fill the order. Burger Town, Last Ramirez, make it count. Smith & Wesson should have won. Is depleted uranium ammunition a meme? No. These boys don't know their ammunition. The answer is yes. Conventional tungsten is better. NTA and do no ballistics. And the answer is no, it's not a meme. If for absolutely no other reason than because it's cheaper and more abundant for military purposes because it is a byproduct of doing nuclear anything. Separately to that, in most applications at a given and relevant velocity, you will get better penetration out of depleted uranium due to the adiabatic shearing and better post-penetration effects against material due to its pyrophoricity. In a narrow band of ballistic applications, tungsten will outperform depleted uranium in the real world. Tungsten versus depleted uranium is the reason that later LEO-2 variants had to upgrade to RH-120 L-55 to keep up with the advances in armored technology by pushing for sonic fast velocity, while M1A1 and A2 were able to stay with the RH-120 L-44. In addition, the two arguments against depleted uranium are real and serious, but not capability related. 1. It's probably bad for the health of friendly personnel exposed to it during use. 2. If you don't have a massive nuclear industry that produces it as a byproduct, then it's not particularly cheap or abundant, even compared to tungsten. Yes, it doesn't offer any advantages, which is why it should be civilian legal. In the 1970s, thin sheets of depleted uranium were sold by someone in Florida as a facing material for the frisons used in flintlock rifles. The advertisements claimed that the uranium was so effective that it would work well even if struck with a dull flint or any kind of rock. These claims were not far from the truth. Being pyrophoric, the uranium could generate consistent and intense showers of sparks. While depleted uranium provided a reliable method to ignite black powder, the tiny uranium fragments that became airborne when the flintlock was discharged posed a potential inhalation hazard. Depleted uranium flintlock. White House says multiple Houthi leaders killed. Iran on notice. How would K effectively deal with the Houthi pirates? Send Hassan to negotiate. He'd suck them off and chat about One Piece. I would listen. And that's what nobody did. PT boat, armed with M230 30mm chain gun on bow, 25mm Bushmaster chain gun on stern. Keep dual M2s and turrets on each side. Replace torpedoes with launchers for switchblade loitering munitions for a standoff capacity. Use diesel engines instead of gasoline, and make it of fiberglass instead of wood. 24/7 combat air patrol over Yemen. Who says they are our enemies? They are firing missiles at us. They wouldn't be firing missiles at us if we weren't standing in their way. How can you stand in the ocean? I'd let the IDF conduct an invasion and occupation mission of Yemen, alone. Mine out the coasts they use as firing platforms. I propose a three-pronged operation. The Command Intelligence Group will operate from 3 berks, using drones to conduct surveillance operations. Their MH-60 helicopters will also be used for surveillance. Emphasis will be kept on maintaining close contact with merchant marine shipping in the area. The Combat Operations Group will operate using smaller vessels, emphasizing speed and overwhelming firepower. They will use high-performance speedboats outfitted with rotary cannons as well as 2-man strike teams equipped with personal watercraft. The watercraft will be equipped with hull-mounted 50 cal operatable by the pilot, while the passenger gunner will have a light machine gun. The third group is where it all comes together. Operating out of a repurposed fish factory ship, they will be in charge of special missions and cleanup. This will include interrogation of pirates captured alive and Skunk Works facility for experimental weapons development and testing, and a recycling operation to reprocess the dead pirates' biomass into biofuel. I would simply let them continue hijacking cargo ships until they have so many ships they can't handle them all, and be unable to ransom them as different Houthi warlords demand greater and greater ransoms, which will eventually force the insurance companies to write it all off. I'll defeat them with pure economics. Now pirates are directly paid by companies to take their ships so they can cash out on the insurance. Why is the US meddling in international affairs? Terrorists and their organizations are everyone's affairs. You touched the fucking boats. The first time America ever meddled with international affairs was specifically to kill pirates on the other side of the Atlantic who had been fucking with American vessels. Blanket everything with a population over 50 from Constantinople to Mogadishu and Karachi with nuclear hellfire. Take what is needed beneath the ashes. Turkish Spaz 12 clone allegedly coming to the US for $350. I don't know about y'all, but I'm harder than a diamond right now. Spaz Bros, we're back. Cheap out on the folding stock. The most iconic part. It looks like metal to me. Gonna be Turk shit. $350? So these things are gonna sell like hotcakes and then they're gonna start exploding, right? Was actually a bit excited to see this, but won't get my hopes up until it's proven reliable enough to be more than a cheap range toy. The regular Spaz is a pile of shit. People are going to buy this because it looks fucking rad and has the hook. Start exploding, right? You assume people that buy Turk shit actually shoot their guns. It's from some Twitter twit. I doubt they could ever make something like that for that price point. Around the price range they're asking for, I could believe it could be that cheap. Better hope it doesn't get cooked after 1,000 rounds or so. T. Maverick 88 owner. Dog shit gun. Well, duh, Anon. Obviously. It's Turk. Even the original was overrated trash. I see this as a good thing. A low-priced option will lower the price of the common variations of the originals in the short term. However, ultimately it will increase interest in the gun because it creates a division between originals and clones. In other words, I think it will affect the market, same as the new Python. Copy a gun which is only interesting because of its looks. Manage to fuck up the grip, which is the easiest part of the whole design to get right. Soulless. Turkish shotgun? I'm 99% sure James hates his life and is trying some elaborate life insurance scam so his wife still gets a payout with all those Turk shit tests. Trigger group is over-designed Turk slop and not the iconic Franchi trigger group. Stock is an 870 LEO folder with a hook, not the iconic Franchi folder. The rise in the front of the heat shield for no reason. The grip, the receiver, They took a major L in not putting a rail on it. Could stick a Bushnell hollow sight on it to get real 90s vibes. If it's anything more than $500, it's going to be a failure. Anyone with money won't want to buy Turk shit, and poor fags can't afford anything more than that. It has to compete with $250 magazine-fed Turkish shotguns that appeal more to the Mall Ninja PFG crowd. The semis are shit, but the pumps, such as the VRPA 40, are pretty good. Losing battle unless there are enough SPAS 12 stands to support it by themselves. Clone, barely passing a resemblance to the real thing. They didn't even get the stock right. Click on the link. See this pic. It's so badly photoshopped, for a second I thought someone on here made this pic. Are leading from the front generals officially extinct now? Yeah, leading from the front is the dumbest shit ever unless you're King Albert. Once the fighting starts, a general's real work is done. He should have perfectly competent subordinate officers to handle his brigades, and if he has done his job that he is supposed to do before the fighting starts adequately, then interfering with them would do far more harm than good. He instead should be turning his attention to raising the morale of his men. And a supremely effective way of doing that, which has been recognized literally since the dawn of civilization, is to go out among them and be seen to be doing so. A way for it to come back is that there should be a general drone that the general flies. Then they can lead from the front again, from the front of the drone swarm. It's ironic how both these dudes died, made through all their campaigns without a scratch just to die away from the battlefield. Leading from the front was actually safer for them. Budanov has been on odds, but he likely sticks to a desk nowadays. The Votniks have and are constantly trying to assassinate him. No doubt he's returning the favor. Leadership bravado has a place, but in modern war it's pretty retarded to literally be on the front lines. Have been for a while now. It's just not possible to coordinate an army from the front line anymore. If the commander had proper information, he wouldn't have to go to the dangerous front line. Rommel in Africa had many close calls. Pull up the video of that Russian major who took a bike ride somewhere by the front line and got droned. Leading from the front was always a pointless moral stunt to prevent disgruntled soldiers from revolting. Today's troops are so brainwashed they will go and get themselves killed without question for some guy who sits in a chair 1,000 miles away, literally raised from birth in a concrete box. Mattis was famous/notorious for sticking his dick in a hornet's nest. 2 of his personal attachés were killed by a mortar in Iraq. He also met personally with very hostile clerics and imam with only his sidearm and minimal security. Typical retarded Marine shit. Oh yeah, definitely. Attempting good faith negotiations with a hostile tribe is retarded. The previous representative was a beloved native Iraqi, who was beheaded attempting the same. Typical based Marine shit. Fixed that for you, faggot. Neither of those guys led from the front, unless you define the front as anything within range of large caliber artillery. But the US and Germany, and all other combatants, did have generals killed in the action, including many from small arms fire and even a few who were killed while personally flying combat missions, like Pick Related, who was killed on his 30th B-17 mission, Frederick W. Castle. My dad was a personnel clerk in Saigon, and he told me the story of some lieutenant colonel who liked command from a helicopter hovering at very low altitude. and had a reputation for having this aura around him, where everyone just knew he would always come out without a scratch, only his aides absolutely did not. My dad's boss was complaining how he only had so many spare first lieutenants to dole out every month, and this asshole was going through them at twice the rate of other battalion commanders. I will take this opportunity to talk about a Welsh general named Thomas Rees, a manlet in the British Army during World War II, dubbed the Pocket Napoleon. He proved himself to be both personally brave and a highly efficient staff officer, who was credited as the essential ingredient to the 4th Indian Division's success during the stunning British victory in Operation Compass. After being sacked for being right in the middle of Gazala, he was sent to Burma to command 19th Indian, where he distinguished himself as one of the few British generals who was willing and able to go on the offensive against the Japanese, which led to a funny little, albeit most likely, apocryphal story. A new staff officer arrives and asks for Rees, and one of the staff officers says at the front, "Well, how close is he?" "About 2.5 yards. Also, Bill Slim would later write, the 19th Indian Division was literally led by their dynamic commander, Pete Rees, known to his British troops as the Pocket Napoleon. What he lacked in inches, he made up for by the miles he advanced. He was an inspiring divisional commander. The only criticism I made was to point out that the best huntsmen did not invariably ride ahead of their hounds." During the American Civil War, a total of 124 generals died, with 78 from the Confederate side and 46 from the Union side. Brutal. Leading from the front in the age of guns and artillery is kind of insanity. Best and worst commanders in the Pacific War. The discussion about the best leaders is usually about the European theater, so who would you consider your favorites and why? Worst? Yamamoto Nagumo. What did Yamamoto do wrong? Java Sea, Coral Sea, Indian Ocean Raid, and Pearl Harbor were all mildly successful to totally successful. He was one of the better ones. You could have chosen Mikawa, Kondo, Nishikawa, or Kakuta. Midway was his fault. The Army wanted to focus on Australia. The rest of the Navy wanted to take a bunch of islands, whose names escape me at the moment, so they can interdict shipping between the US and Australia. Yamamoto wanted Midway, and when he was told, "No, that's pointless, Midway doesn't offer any use," he threw a crybaby bitch fit until everyone else relented and let him take Midway. An operation which was overly complicated, by the way, and then of course the carriers got BTFO by Best Dick. The Army wanted to focus on Australia. The Army was stretched thin already. I'm pretty sure they wanted to slow the fuck down and consolidate what they had. The rest of the Navy wanted to take a bunch of islands whose names escape me at the moment so they can interdict shipping between US and Australia. This was the plan once they knocked out the US carriers, which was the point of Midway. Midway wasn't so much the goal as a tool to which achieve the real goal, crippling the US carrier fleet and thus attaining air supremacy in the Pacific until at least late 43. He never won a battle that he personally commanded. Dude is popular because he was one of the few Jap commanders with common sense and made a lot of pessimistic predictions about the war that came true. But he still subscribed to the decisive battle between BBs. Bullcrap, Kantai-Kessen, which ultimately led to a lot of flawed strategies that violate basic military principle. War plan was to seek decisive engagements to force the US to compromise but boldly push for an attack on Pearl, which ensured the US public would never accept a negotiated peace. Was satisfied with destroying the BBs in Pearl Harbor, where he should have focused on critical facilities, oil tanks repairs, and the CVs. Never tried to attack the Allied supply lines or use his subs for raiding despite having superiority early in the war. Never concentrated his CVs after Pearl and mostly sent them on errands, despite Japanese advantage in CV operations, pilots and planes. This would lead to his fleet not having enough strength to decisively defeat the vulnerable US task force at Guadalcanal and or carry out their mission at Midway. Impulsively decided on attacking Midway despite the low reward and high risk, too far away and not large enough as a base to invade Hawaii. Split his forces at Midway and forced radio silence, making his forces weak and unable to help each other. Gave conflicting objectives to Nagumo, invading Midway and destroying the US fleet, leading Nagumo to make the fateful decision to rearm his aircrafts to take Midway instead of trying to seek and destroy the US fleet. I think Yamamoto is looked upon very fondly in US circles to him being very pro-US and knowing the war was doomed from the start. Best is Nimitz. Worst Allied general I would say is Archibald Wavell. MacArthur is severely overrated for his wartime performance, but he was a great administrator of post-war Japan. Nagumo caused the IJN so many blunders, so I would call him the worst. Best Jap commander was Yamashita, I think. I would pick Ugaki for being the stereotypical Japanese battleships are the end-all and we must be aggressive in bringing the enemy into a decisive battle, but then he goes the step further of being the dick behind kamikaze as a strategy. And he brought his men to their deaths after the war had ended. While I personally have my doubts to how accurate his recollection of events is, Hara's description of Captain Kaju Segura's reaction to his objections about repeating supply runs to Guadalcanal show the issue of complacency in the face of the enemy to be an issue that extended far throughout the IJN, rather than a single person being a fuck-up. The Japanese conquest of the Malaysian peninsula and quick capture of Singapore is very impressive. Japanese planning and leadership contrasts very favorably against British planning and leadership. The Japanese made MacArthur look like a fool at the same time. Both Percival and Malaysia and MacArthur in the Philippines had a numerical advantage and were defeated despite being on the defensive. History is right to judge both Percival and MacArthur harshly. MacArthur especially wasted a tremendous amount of men and material through poor generalship and a catastrophic loss. Mac's New Guinea campaign was horrific for the soldiers that fought it too. Logistics were complete garbage, training inadequate, tactics questionable, poor staff work, etc. They lost more guys to disease than enemy action kind of deal. Could just simply bypass the Nips and let them rot in the jungle. Apparently had to march out there and stab them with bayonets. It's only through the competence of guys like Eichelberger and Kinney that the campaign succeeded. The only time MacArthur was competent was in retaking the Philippines. The rest of his World War II career was mediocre to horrible. Fuck knows why that asshole was still around to fuck up Korea. He was good at PR and taking credit for others' work. Maybe the guy Clapper's in bed with the Chinese. Heard he was a retard. Judging by their performance, the Chinese nationalists probably had some real steamers too. The Chinese had a lot of incompetent generals, but I think it was mostly due to how shit the Chinese army was organized in general at that point along with the troop quality. Even though the Japs were getting the shit kicked out of them in the Pacific Islands, they were still making large offensives into China in late 1944, which practically destroyed the KMT and allowed Mao to gain a large foothold post-war. Did Japan have even a single competent commander in the whole war? After the initial sucker punch, they lost every single battle with high lopsided casualty rates against them in a way that should be impossible for defenders to have. Even the Italians never lost battles as badly as the Japanese did. Was Imperial Japan the worst military in history? Navy-wise, I would give that to the Russians at Tsushima. The Japanese at least took one US carrier with them at Midway. The Russian Navy just got stomped without inflicting any significant losses. If you looked only at the Pacific War, you might be able to make that case, but the Russo-Japanese War, World War I, and First Sino-Japanese War, and their early colonial wars were all completely prosecuted and were victorious in most engagements. Pushing in the shit of the Russians and Germans successfully won them a lot of respect that nobody would have imagined before. They also lacked the brutality that they became known for later. Russian and German POWs were treated remarkably well by the standards of the time. There's a big discontinuity in the military culture around the 1930s. Junior officers in the Russo-Japanese War were young, samurai/aristocrats rising through the ranks. They were more refined and cosmopolitan. Yamamoto is from this stock. Junior IJA officers in World War II were mostly ignorant rednecks drunk on emperor worship Kool-Aid. The Navy was noticeably more Westaboo and moderate compared to the Army. Naval Academy graduates were required to learn English, Western etiquette, and act like English gentlemen. The Academy refused to drop the English as a language instruction despite right-wing pressures. The IJA and IJN rivalry stem in part from the difference between the background of Army and Navy officers. Navy officers regarded Army officers as country bumpkins who lacked etiquette. Conversely, the Army criticized the Navy as an arrogant elitist group that drained the national budget more than necessary. The Japanese public and civilian officials preferred naval officers because they were dignified gentlemen, with the Navy producing more prime ministers and statesmen than the Army. The Army criticized the Navy as an arrogant elitist group, which is funny considering the berry thing. For the KMT Army, Soon Lee Jin was very popular. For the British, William Slim is considered all around the best general of World War II. He might not have had genius tactical acumen, but he was innovative, cautiously aggressive, resourceful, diplomatic, and tactful. Was well liked by the soldiers, personally charismatic, and rebuilt the British Army in India virtually from scratch. They did nothing strategic. It was a sideshow, regrabbing turf from a defeated IJA. This far into the thread, nobody has mentioned Spruance? What the fuck? Nagumo was kind of a tard, but it didn't help that he was squaring off against electric-brained Spruance, who was definitely the best operational level commander of the Allies. Comparing all countries and branches, he was like the Allied Manstein. People hand-waved Midway as a Nagumo being retarded, but it was more Spruance making an insane string of deductions and hunches and working out exactly how to turn an extremely dicey tactical and strategic situation into one of the greatest Allied victories of the war. It would have made more sense to push west in Ceylon than control the Suez and probably knock the Brits totally out of the war, then go jab the sleeping giant for some reason. They expected the US to go help the Brits, and they were right. Before Pearl, the US had embargoed Japan of virtually everything vaguely military usable, from bullets to boot leather to butter. They were running neutrality patrols to secure supply lines to Britain, even at the expense of US ships, e.g. USS Reuben James. They were providing China with funds, P-40 fighters, and Chennault's volunteers who were scheduled to go into action with their new fighters in December. Sure, that's all fair, but it's politically difficult to imagine the USA going after Japan without a Pearl Harbor. The fuel embargo? I never really got why that was an issue, since after they took over the Dutch East Indies, they had like the world's third largest proven reserves under control. And if they follow up on the Indian Ocean raid, aside from possibly knocking out the Brits if you cut the Suez, you can also grab the Persian oil fields, or randomly decide to step on that rake that is the battleship Roe and get fucking blasted by 7th Fleet and almost immediately take a war-losing L. Odd choice on their part. Best and worst. I think it should be obvious why a general who gains territory at high casualty rates is a bad general. Pinkos will disagree. Any idiot can gain ground after sending wave after wave. Overwatch. Contact with anti-citizens. VizCon on heavy weapons. Request airborne. Recommendation: helicopter takes like 40 rockets to kill and has infinite bombs. Obviously it's a game and you can't curb stomp the player in the first 10 minutes. But it's implausible how little force the Combine really used against Freeman. Like they knew the moment he got snapped by a scanner outside the train station that there was an undocumented human in the city. And they were able to have a team breaching the building he had entered within less than a minute. And within 10 minutes of that, Gordon is teleported to Breen's office, and so Breen is alerted that shit is serious. But it seems like the escalation of force completely stalls after that. A 1984-style regime like the Combine must have QRFs on standby for this very occurrence. And they're able to track Gordon's movements through the sewers with manhacks and a lone hunter chopper. So really, Gordon should have been facing multiple gunships and dropships full of white elites before he even reaches the airboat. I don't know, when I replayed it, it seemed like the Combines were really trying to get him mobilizing the entirety of Metro Cops to get him with the closest Metro Cops dying first, and so on. Also, consider that the entire game is happening in real time. My dude, they can literally teleport in heavies. What? Aside from the giant intergalactic teleportation thing atop the Citadel that takes ages to teleport a single person, and the semi-functional teleporter in the Resistance Lab, there are no other teleporters in the game. Combine teleportation is cross-dimensional only. A significant part of what got the Combine interested in humans is that they got close to figuring out point-to-point teleportation. You're forgetting the teleporter in Nova Prospect, which was Mossman trying to recreate Kleiner finally making it work. I think it was paced accurately because historically speaking, an overwhelming force never thinks it needs to supply much danger close style warfare against what seems to be a minor insurgency. None of the resistance mobilized much prior to this, and it was more losses than victories. Once shit got serious, Striders came out en masse. Was a shame they didn't add the Hunters to that release though. Helly, the insane amount of bombs they can pack inside can kill any anti-citizen in a confined space. Aren't the Combine you fight in Half-Life 2 the lesser forms? Like they basically have infested the whole galaxy and can teleport. You're basically fighting the equivalent of Combine middle managers until the end. The Combine were supposed to have a Dyson Sphere in Half-Life 3, and even in Episode 2. It was said that opening the portal to the Combine's main forces would lead to a war that would last like 7 minutes. Whoever the fuck is in charge of the Combine seems to make very heavy use of local forces, Metro Cops and Overwatch, supplemented by a few standardized patterns they send out to serve as heavy platforms, Striders, Hunters, etc. The Combine that conquered Earth came and went. What remains is pretty much just a backwater colonial garrison of native auxiliaries, with some material support, and since it's a bit ambiguous if they'd count as material. The Half-Life universe has so much keynote potential as a series, it's unreal. It's a product of quality world building, unlike some modern AAA titles that have literal walls surrounding the playable area with nothing but empty plains behind it. Nobody coming or leaving, an explicit indication to player that there's nothing there. And then it tries to convince you that you're in a real location on a much bigger world, while a quick glimpse down any long street reminds you of the opposite. Reminder that Valve outsmarted all its player base. You can kill the chopper that shot the missile, simply by not pointing the laser at it before the missile went past it. Then the missile will turn around and attack it from behind. So I remember reading about the Universal Union. That's the multi-dimensional alien empire, right? So what's the Combine? The client state on Earth? Like what the Afghanistan government was to the United States? Also, did the aliens actually get the Black Mesa teleport tech, or was it something they were working on but hadn't actually cracked? The only teleportation tech that the Combine has is interdimensional, incapable of traveling in the same universe. Mossman was developing a copy of the Rebels tech, but it was still in its infancy when Nova Prospekt was destroyed, and their official name is the Combine. Universal Union was just something Breen called them to make it sound more palatable. The Combine is actually a slur. It's like calling the Third Reich or the Greater German Reich Nazi Germany. Breen actually corrects one of his assistants when they said Combine instead of Universal Union. There's no racism under the Universal Union. We abolished that. Vote Breen. I think it's neat that the Combine is such a bureaucratic nightmare of a regime that they genuinely cannot be fucked to oppress humanity harder than they already do, until Freeman shows up and Breen asks them for help. It's implied that Earth was just some backwater shithole that they decided to just use humans to policy their rule under the slugs, until they found out they had dimensional teleportation. Then they started to actually take shit seriously. G-Man is an intergalactic real estate agent. He engineers the resonance cascade and observes Freeman being the main individual who successfully enters the Zen border world and unblocks it. He forces Freeman into a contract, which is the choice made at the end of Half-Life 1. Freeman is put in stasis. Now that Zen is unblocked, G-Man sells access to Earth to the Combine. However, the Combine pisses him off. Maybe the intensive resource extraction violates their agreement or whatever. G-Man reactivates Freeman to destroy the Combine, knowing that a human will be sufficiently motivated to do so. While Freeman is doing this, Half-Life 2 demonstrates that Freeman also thinks of G-Man as a villain as well as the Combine. G-Man kidnapped him after all. Half-Life 3 has to depict the defeat of the Combine and Freeman somehow defeating G-Man.
In the spell of the rolling rock and rhythm of the sea, rock and roll and rock along, like a sweet greeted with